So quite a few weird synchronicities have happened and making this meeting happen. It was very weird. Lots of strange things have been happening in my life. So is that common? Do you hear that from lots of people?
That happens all the time. Many people, that, particularly when I'm being interviewed, as people always say, well, I did a sigil to meet you, or I did this, and it came true. So everyone tends to be sitting in that position. They're just like, how the fuck? I did something and it all worked out.
Can you explain a sigil?
It's a basic magical idea, but it became popularised by Osmond Spare, the artist.
Yes.
He was.
Sorry, we are going to hear trains going because we're in Glasgow.
This is great, isn't it?
It'd be fitting if I brought you to Anderson Railway Arches.
Yeah, those don't even sound like trains. They sound like people dragging coffins.
It probably is coffin draggers.
Yeah. So his version of it was to say, take a desire like, I would love to be a fine actor, and you take out the vowels and you have left with a string of consonants, then you kind of mash the consonants together. Take out the repeated letters, mash the consonants together, and you basically create a witchy looking sign or symbol. And what you do with that is meditate on it, and there's lots of ways of doing that. So the idea is to create a state of no mind where you basically focus so hard on this sigil, and then the desire will manifest within a few days, a few months. And I've found it been incredibly effective, ridiculously effective, and it's the thing I've always handed out to people. It's kind of like the acid trip of magic, you just try one of these. I need a sniff of these, and you tell people the technique. And so many people have just tried it because I've said, look, don't take my word for it. You've got to try these things. This isn't like I'm trying to sell you a belief system. This is just stuff that I've investigated and found that this works. I don't quite know why it works. I think it works in some, like I say, some kind of holographic self-similarity of the universe, where we're all
Say that again, a holographic...
Holographic self-similarity. So in a hologram, every piece of the hologram contains all the information of the whole. And if you look at the way the universe is structured, you'll see the same spiral everywhere, and the golden mean is everywhere.
It's literally repeated. It's not like a facsimile, it's the same information
again. It's the
again.
same information repeated. So ones and zeros, you can make the entire universe from ones and zeros, in binary code. One of them looks like a penis and the other one's a vagina. And we can build things like Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed, the most beautiful simulations now, which are they're incredible to me. They're like on the level of the Sistine Chapel. So take that same technology maybe 100 years in the future, maybe even as little as 50 or 25, and it could well be that you can create universes that look as convincing as this.
Your comics are concerned with really big ideas, like the ones we've just been discussing. So I've been looking at your work, trying to work out where these massive concepts come from, and I've heard that the atomic bomb loomed very large in your childhood.
Yeah, well, my dad was and my mother as well. They were both anti-nuclear activists in the late 50s and early 60s. My dad particularly, he'd been a soldier in the war, so he'd been out in Burma, and what he saw there, he was just really, really upset and annoyed by the fact that the British Army, he felt, were as monstrous in the way they treated people in India, like men and women and children in India. So he ended up basically fighting his own people a lot. He ended up in jail quite often because he was constantly fighting with his own commanding officers and getting into trouble. So they sent him to Burma and put him in a parachute, and that's what he did. The world will end. I used to dream about it all the time, like bombed out vistas, because my dad had these magazines he'd bring home, and they were allegedly anti-nuke mags, but they always had covers where it would be the entire world is destroyed.
Like destruction porn.
Yeah, and basically there'd be a skeleton lying there with a flower growing through its eye socket, and it'd be kind of never again. And I see these things, and there'd also be...
That's traumatising though.
No, absolutely. Photographs of kids like after Hiroshima, so there'd be these one-eyed babies and mutant children. So he'd have these lying about, and I'd be, oh my god, this is the way it's going to go. But interestingly enough, the same people who brought the bomb brought comic books, because the US servicemen were bringing comics in, and the story goes that they brought them in as ballast on the ships.
What was that to weigh?
Yeah, allegedly they said this. I've heard other people say that story's bullshit, but it's so good that it's worth repeating.
Yeah. What were some of the comics that inspired you to think that you could get into them and led you to like Animal Man and stuff like that?
The stuff I liked was in the 70s there was a lot of kids come in to do comics who were basically hippies or they'd been to the Vietnam War. So there was this amazing period in the sort of mid-70s where Marvel comics went incredibly psychedelic because they were being written by all these young dudes taking acid. And so for me, it was the perfect medium, you know. It just seemed like you can talk about these insane, huge Jungian concepts, but in a format that's absolutely symbolic and allegorical. So it was like writing fables or writing legends.
So in The Invisibles, Dane has lots of would-be teachers. So one of my favourites is Big Malky in the very beginning.
Yeah,
There's something about him, it's like Grange Hill or something.
He's like one of those geography teachers we all used to have.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of do good. Then you've got Tom a Bedlam. King Mob. The alien forms in one form or another are trying to educate him. I thought that was a repeating motif. Who did you have in your early days that was a figure like that set you on a certain path?
I wish I'd had a proper guru, but I never met anyone like that. But I got into magic because of my mum, who was, she was pretty witchy. She used to read tea leaves and stuff, but her and her sister would talk about seeing ghosts and things, and I'd never seen anything like that. It sounded so amazing. So when I heard about magic, and then my mother's brother, my Uncle Billy, he was seriously into magic. He was like into Crowley, and he did ritual stuff, and he had the most amazing library. So he also read comic books, which again was the connection to all these things. All seemed to be part of the same milieu that I was in. So Billy was just, he gave me a tarot pack on my 19th birthday, and I'd asked the Crowley Book of Thoth, and just said, go and try this for yourself. And I tried the rituals.
That's such a hilarious, he just gave it to you and said, go and have a play
pretty much.
With black magic, see what happens.
This was only a few years after he'd turned up at the door with his face white as a sheet because he'd seen somebody conjured something that he couldn't handle. So he gave me this, and I thought, okay, this man says that if I do this, and he gives me a formula for it. It's Crowley I'm looking at. It's formula here, I can actually follow this, I can do this spell, and he says if I do this I'll see, or something will appear to me, an angel, or bullshit. So I did it, and I got the thing, this lion's head, and this was me, 19, I didn't take any drugs, I didn't drink coffee even, or drink alcohol, and suddenly there's this blazing lion's head in the room, and it's only afterwards it's like, what the fuck was that? That couldn't be. But in the midst of it, there's this sense of, there's something, and I can't quite, it's not physical, it's not solid, but I can see it.
Wow. So Batman Arkham Asylum was your first massive mainstream hit. I mean, Animal Man was a huge critical success. Yeah, but would you say that Arkham Asylum changed your life?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, because I remember Karen Berger called me up and just said, the day the sales came in, and she just said, I'm going to tell you the sales now, but first thing I want to say is you're rich. And I was like, oh yes, because I'd never been rich in my life, I never had money, I was on the dole for 9 years, it was all that. I'd read David Bowie saying if you get money, the first thing you should do is travel, it's the best thing. And I just went nuts. South Sea Islands, taking mushrooms with the little kids on the beaches in Java.
And is that when you went to Kathmandu?
Kathmandu was, 1994, so that was just a couple of years after that period happened, and I was doing a lot of travelling. And that happened because my friend and I were sitting watching some documentary with Dan Cruikshank, who was following in the footsteps of Buddha. He comes to this temple in Nepal called Swayambhunath, which is a self-created one. It's supposed to be the holiest place in the Nepal Valley, and one of the holiest places in Buddhism. But the idea was there's 365 stairs, one for each day of the year, and if you can climb them all in one long breath of oxygen, you'll get enlightenment guaranteed.
I can't do 2 steps in one breath.
Well, you're probably doing.
Fuck's now enlightenment.
You can forget that. So that was it. We thought, this is amazing. We're guaranteed enlightenment now. And we just went back to the hotel and got drunk again. But the next night, this thing happened. The next afternoon, actually, where I had what I've tried to describe in 1,000 different ways, but it might as well have been an alien abduction, it might as well have been a magical experience of the holy guardian angel, as Crowleyans call it. It might have been...
I might have had a little stroke.
Yeah, anything, but whatever it was so profound and so unlike anything I'd experienced. It changed my entire life completely, and out of that came The Invisibles. In fact, out of that came everything. Everything I've written since then has been in one way or another trying to make sense of what happened that day.
There's a scene in The Invisibles when Dane is in the presence of extra-dimensional beings, and they give him messages.
Yeah.
They tell him who he is, they affirm his true self to him, and then they tell him what his mission is on Earth.
No, that's exactly what happened, yeah.
Okay.
I was lying on the bed and I just thought, okay, when's this? What's going to happen? I need some enlightenment. What form is this going to take? And out of the walls came these blobs like they used to get in rave videos. So I always compare them. You know, back in the 90s, they always had these silver mercurial blobs in dance music videos, and they were like that, just blobs of stuff. And it was just basically, they said, well, you asked for this. And oh fuck, okay, you asked for this, you're going to get a bit of a shock, and you've got to try and remember as much of this as possible, because we're going to take you to some place that's bigger than your normal head, and you probably won't be able to get lots of it back down, but do your best. And they basically turned my consciousness and rotated me out of the 4 dimensions of space and time into something bigger that contained space and time. So I'm in this place, and it kind of was like, and when I say looked, I mean, I had senses, but I was no longer in my body. I was one of these things too, because I looked down on this rippling, shimmering chrome thing, but it was a gigantic blue space. It seemed enclosed, but it seemed also infinite, you know, so it was, but dimensionally it was very odd. There was weird white tracers, like architectural blueprint lines, going through, like silver lines, and they'd appear, and every so often one of these creatures would kind of plug itself into one of the grid points. It would flare up, and they would be sending information through this entire structure. One of them comes along and they say, well, interact with this other one of you. Blob goes through me, and it's just my mother's entire, everything I've ever thought about my mother all at once. And then she said, next time you can be me. Out the other side. And then, so they're starting to explain this, saying, so you're in this place now, we have space and time, but we have other bigger things. Space and time are just a couple of, like, breadth and length are in your world. So the problem with us is that to create new versions, to create new members of our species, we don't have time here. Time is always, time's happening all the time. This is only one day, it never ends. So to create new ones, we have to make time, because only in time do things grow.
And have sequence. And
yeah. So they said basically, in order to create a new one of us, we do this. And I saw that it was like stalls, is all I remember now, but they had universes in them. And they basically said, that one's yours there. And I'm looking at this thing, and they said, so if you go in, and they said, you've not to worry about it. One of our children, we put it on your planet a long time ago, and it's growing there, and it's you. Of course it's you, because they said if you go back, if you trace everything back through time, you know, to get here today, I had to come in through the door, back down the stairs. But you today, you got here, we all walked in, we set up.
Yeah.
You know, we couldn't have got here if the past didn't exist. So we know the past exists. We know we were once 10 years old, or else we wouldn't be here today.
Yes.
So where are we 10 years old? You can't point to it. We live in a flat
dimensional
plane.
I've got it. So it's like when we look at a picture, we can see the picture, but the people in the picture are in a flat 2D.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
I've got it.
And again, that's where it relates to comics, which is why I love comics so much. So, I mean, getting all this mad download of stuff, and they said, so every living thing in your planet goes back. If you track it back through the door and down the stairs, it's like they all go back. You go back into your mother. She goes back. It's unbroken. They said there's only one entity on the planet, and it's everything. It's every living thing. And it looks like, and so they showed me it from a higher dimensional perspective, and it was like a giant anemone thing, like millions of branches, fractal thing. And the root of it was in the sea 3.5 billion years ago, which was the first dividing cell. First mitochondrial cell is still dividing in every cell in every part of your body.
So we're from that.
Yeah, it's immortal.
We're all from that.
We're all immortal. It's not even from it, we are it.
We are it.
Because it's still growing through us all. And this is what they made me understand, was that you're all one thing. It's like, they said, you know, if you saw it in a 2-dimensional plane and you dipped your hand into a 2-dimensional plane, all the inhabitants of that plane would see is 4 circles. They wouldn't realise it was one giant entity, right?
Yes.
And they said so it was basically getting time vision. It was Doctor Who vision. You know,
sure.
Suddenly I was able to see.
I'm just saying it's Doctor Who vision.
You know, and it's so that's how time works. Wow, and I could see how everything was one thing. And I said that's one of us. That's the larval form of us. And we put it on your planet. And they said to me, don't worry about what's happening, don't worry about the degradation of the environment. So think about a caterpillar on a leaf. It seems to be consuming its environment, but it's actually just powering a metamorphosis. Caterpillar, that's the thing, yeah. and that's what, so it was like, do not fear. You know, it's
wow.
Like you're only consuming it by power of metamorphosis, and when that thing grows up, it becomes one of them.
The thing I find comforting about the concept of a caterpillar is when a caterpillar is turning into a butterfly, it's going into a chrysalis form. Mm-hmm. It doesn't know what's happening.
No.
And if you're a caterpillar, it must be fucking terrifying, and it's a very violent scary process, but on the other side you become a butterfly, and it's only us looking in do we realise that there's a beautiful thing happening, but to the caterpillar it's fucking terrifying.
Because the caterpillar is also going through it moment by moment and doesn't see that there is a larger scale picture of what's going to happen to it. And as you say, the caterpillar is dissolved completely inside the cocoon, there's nothing remained, and then the absolute dissolution of that thing is used to build something new. So they were kind of comparing it to that, and as if to, at least give me some hope. And they said,
did it give you hope when
no,
you
it
came
gave me
out
more
to it?
than hope. And I have to say, this place I was in was so much more real than any of this. It was the definition of it, the colours, the intensity of everything, including the emotions, which were these gigantic aggregates. When these things talked, they talked, it was like an orchestra, but it was an orchestra playing emotions and words. It was everything at once. And it was way more real than this. So when I went back, and you've got to try and remember as much as you can, and your job now is to go back and spread the light, just do the right thing. You know what you have to do. You've got to tell people about this. And I just remember, boom, suddenly I'm in this body of meat again with this in
a
my
meat
head.
body with that knowledge.
Yeah, and it was just how much can I remember. I just sat writing and trying to get all this down. And it became the invisibles, it became, what just happened? And obviously the further I've got from it, the more it's just receded. It's become a memory now. I don't remember how beyond real that it once felt, and how way beyond this. This was like a Charlie Chaplin film by comparison to the reality of that other place, and it was so convincing. So I came back I've just had the entire structure of the universe explained to me. I get it, I know what I'm here for, I know everything like you say in the book.
And then I've got some questions from the Vero community.
Okay.
This is from just Martin. Mr. Morrison. That's very
Hey,
polite.
Mr. Morrison.
Sir,
Please just call me son.
I would like to know how Multiversity 2 is going.
It's not really going at all. It was actually just it was an umbrella thing that Dan DiDio at DC came up with because he wanted me to do some more stuff for him. And he just said, we'll call it Multiversity 2, and you can do that story you had in mind, or that Batman story. It was a Flash story as well. So the Batman thing's still kind of going ahead, but nothing's coming out under that Multiversity 2 banner. That banner was kind of retired.
This is from Cam Harrington. Is it true that you're going to be working on Green Lantern? And if so, is there an aspect that you would especially like to explore?
If it was true, I'd especially like to explore space.
Sure. We can't confirm or deny that it's true. But theoretically, if Grant was going to do it, you'd be interested in
space. I think space is going to be the thing.
To finish up, with Trump and Brexit, how are you feeling about the future?
Surprisingly positive, because I think it was way worse when it was Bush and Blair. I think they were much scarier. I think where we are now is it's gone psychedelic. We've fallen down the rabbit hole with Trump, and that he's not capable of doing anything. He's just a huge blustering figure, and we'll look back on this after he's dropped the ball in somewhere next week. But I actually don't believe that he's a major dangerous figure. I think he's ludicrous, and I think all politics, everything's quite ludicrous now. I think we're in this kind of phase transition. And what's most important to me is the fact that, the internet, what it has done is given voices to communities on the fringe who are actually being listened to now. The fact that Hollywood can't get away with what it used to, the fact that people in power can no longer do what they once thought they could do. I do think everything's going to be okay.
Hear that? Everything is going to be okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was a joy.
So interesting. Yeah. Thank you.